Jason. Thanks so much for joining me, man.
Hey, no problem, Ray. I appreciate the invite. Looking forward to chatting a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I was funny. Right before we started, I pulled up your Instagram, and the first photo here, this goldfinch. I'm like, damn, man, all that thistle. Like, where did you find all that thistle? I've never seen so much of it.
It's so that was a funny one because I think I actually wrote in the caption, I have not had any luck with goldfinches like for a while, for years. I just never see them. I literally bought thistle seeds and
Yeah,
put them in my feeder on my
yeah.
deck just to try to get some in my backyard,
Uh
and
huh.
absolutely no luck.
No
And then
kidding.
yeah, there's a local park that my wife and I go to just for walks and stuff, and we take our little guy there sometimes. And
Nice.
right by the parking lot, there's a whole thistle patch that I had never noticed before until it was starting to seed. And we went there one day, and
Oh,
all of a
okay.
sudden, like, I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" I looked over, there was about 15 of them in this little patch, and it was right in front of the parking lot, like about 15, 20 feet in front.
Nice.
So ran home, got the camera, came back, set up a little chair, and was firing away. So that was kind of a lucky stumble upon
Oh,
kind
that's
of
awesome, man.
situation.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. That's great. It's always nice when you just kind of get that random luck thing happening,
Yep.
And the birds stayed, like they were still there. Obviously, it was a good food source, right? So you were able to keep,
Yep.
yeah, have them keep
Yeah,
coming
they
back.
were honestly, dude, they were there for like a month. We
Oh,
kept
no
going
kidding.
back. Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yep. There was like all through June, so we was able to show up a few times and keep shooting away to get the right shot.
That's cool. So this one's like overcast light. Did you try in different lighting or anything like that? Like you get different lighting conditions as you went over a period of time, or were you kind of always trying to get one kind of lighting, or didn't really matter?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much because it was hard. The sun sets behind the thistle,
Gotcha.
and I was usually going there in the evening after work,
Yeah.
so the light was a little bit less harsh.
Yeah.
But they would be backlit unless it was decently overcast. So
Gotcha.
that was like the perfect night where it kind of worked out, and a few of them set up for us. So
Yeah, it really did. It really did, man. How long you been
yeah.
shooting?
So it goes back a long way, actually.
Oh, I'm
I've
interested to hear
always
what the long way is.
I
People
always
say
had a
long way, and you
passion
never
for
know
it.
what you're gonna hear.
Yeah. So as a kid, I was lucky enough. My parents were big into like national parks and all that, and they used to take my brother on family vacations out west. And I started with a
That's
little
cool.
point and shoot, you know, compact little camera, and my
Yeah.
dad had the Nikon, and he would be taking the big boy photos,
Yeah.
if you will. And I got
So it
so
was like film
interested in
then.
that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
Yep.
cool.
Yep. So I got so interested in that he ended up buying me my first camera, which actually, if you can see, it's sitting on the shelf behind me
Oh,
there.
nice.
It's an N60
Nice.
film Nikon. So I dusted that off recently and put it on display. And I shot with that for years. In high school, I was in the photography club, and I just loved, going out and shooting. But unfortunately, I kind of got away from it, and I never really developed beyond point and shoot, taking pictures on auto.
Okay.
It was like something that I was passionate about, but a kid's passion where I didn't really take time to read the manual and learn and get into it. And
Oh, well, I mean that makes
so,
sense
yeah,
at
for
that
sure. But
age.
I just looking back, I'm like, wow, if I had really invested the time and effort into that and committed to it, who knows where it could have gone.
Dude,
But
like some of these crazy ass kids online now, they're like, I see their profile. It's like 16 years old. I'm like, what the hell? It's
I know I'm
insane.
looking
Yeah.
at the like 16-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and I'm like, oh my God, it
Yeah.
makes
Well,
me look
it helps when you
terrible.
don't have a job, right? You just have nothing to do but go out and shoot.
That's true. That is true. But yeah, I recently got back into it once I got a little bit of extra spending cash, and I was older, and
Yeah.
I ended up recently getting a new job where I travel a lot,
Okay.
and it got to the point where I was traveling to all these states, and I'm like, I should be taking advantage of this. So I dusted
Yeah.
off my old D7100 and
Nice.
upgraded some of the glass and got
Yeah.
out there, and then I got the itch, man, and I think I've been going hard at it now for 2.5 years or so.
Sweet. So why wildlife versus landscape? Like, because I know obviously it sounds like you were interested in being outdoors and stuff. I get that from the beginning.
Yep.
But I wonder what skewed towards that way. Was it like a
It,
conscious decision
it's
or?
Yeah, it's always I've been an animal lover my entire
Oh,
life.
okay,
That's
cool.
just been who I am. And
Yeah.
as a kid, I used to on my website I actually have this written in my dedication. I dedicated my work to my grandfather who recently passed. And
Yeah.
as a kid, I used to sit with him, and like we would go through the bird books and make notes of which ones we saw in the backyard. It was like kind of our thing together.
Nice.
And it for me, it's like the thrill of the chase. That's why
Okay.
my handle is hunting with a lens, because I love
Yeah.
being out there and like you never know what you're going to get. With a landscape, yeah, you can you can pretty much guarantee you're going to get the shot. The lighting might not be right,
Sure.
everything else might not be right, and obviously there's a ton of work and talent there. But
Yeah.
with wildlife, it's even more hit or miss, man. You go out any given day, you can see something mind blowing, or you can come up empty. And
Oh,
sometimes I come
yeah.
home and my wife is like, "How'd it go?" And I'm like frustrated. And then I think,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Well, that's when you miss. That's what makes the when you get the hits so much more
No
exciting."
doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
I'm
All
sure
right.
you get that. And for you, I think your work is awesome and inspiring because yours is almost like a mix of landscapes and wildlife. Like if you look at my feed, I have a lot of tight crop, close,
Yeah.
focus on the animal only. And your stuff, one of the that goldfinch photo you saw was kind of inspired by your stuff. Just getting
Yeah. Yeah.
more of a wider view, and I love that you do that. Like some of your landscape style with smaller in frame
Yeah. Yeah.
wildlife is just really cool.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, that came about from, I guess it was mainly like from getting bored of shooting the tight stuff, you know? Like if I go back into my like old stuff, so this is all the stuff that like I've ever shared on social media going back to here we go. We're going to get back into some old nasty photos right here, right?
Oh no, I can't. I can only see my own screen right now. Can I?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Let's stop your share and then you should be able to see mine.
All right.
I guess that would make sense, right? Can you see my screen now?
Now I can. Yep, you're
All
good.
right, cool. Um, yeah, I'm just curious when I'm going back to here. All right, so 2008 are some photos, but if I kind of scroll through here, like you can see, right, everything like for the most part is like definitely tighter, tighter, tighter. But I will say, one of the things that kind of started me shooting further away was so like my first wildlife lens that I started with was a 70 to 200 zoom
Oh
with a
wow.
1.4
Okay.
converter. I mean, this might even be shot with that. Yeah, there you go. Right, 280 millimeter.
All right. There you
Like
go.
that was the max, right? So that kind of gave me no choice, you know. Like you were not getting, and in the beginning, I wasn't good at getting close. Like now, I could probably get away with 300 millimeter and still find and manage to get some close portraits. Um,
Yep.
but back then I couldn't. And then my dad got a, let's see what this was. Oh no, this was still that. Wow. How the hell
That's
did I get
really
that
good though. That's
background at
sharp.
280? Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought that was like me borrowing my dad's lens because right. So we get into it together and then he's a Canon shooter, which sucked because I was Nikon from the beginning.
Oh,
And so then he ends up getting a 300-2.8. That was his first like big prime. And yeah, I remember thinking at the time like, wow, this lens is like, look at this gigantic lens. Now I see a 300-2.8. I'm like, oh, look at that little like thing, you know? Uh, but so anyway, he gets this 300-2.8, and I'm like, oh, this lens is amazing. And then I don't know, a year or two later, he gets a 500 f4, and I'm still at that point. I think I had upgraded to a 300 f4. But
okay.
it was like the old Nikon 300 f4. It was built like a tank. It was razor sharp, but slow focusing and heavy and chunky.
Yep.
But he's got the 500 f4. I'm like, son of a bitch. If he was shot Nikon, like I could borrow this damn thing once in a while, you know?
He did that
And
on purpose.
yeah. And I was just so used to Nikon at the time, I wasn't going to switch. And I was kind of already somewhat invested. And it's funny
Yep.
because it came about from the studio I worked for. Like my first job ever was a wedding and portrait studio. And
Mhm.
they shot, well, their first digital camera was a Kodak digital camera. It was a Kodak DSLR. And that was based on a Nikon. Well, the first one was based on a Canon, then the next one after that was based on a Nikon body. So they ended up with a whole kit of Nikon lenses, and then their next camera after that was a Nikon DSLR. And so I had
Okay.
just kind of like learned on that, so that's what I was used to, you know. Uh,
Nice. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. Hey, once you get into with something that's, you're not going back once you start making the investment in the glass. So.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But still, I mean, looking through this gallery, at least in the beginning here, it definitely is like I'm cropping heavy on some of this stuff, and
Hmm.
I mean that's a little bit scenic right here. Let me bring
Yeah.
this up. Just waiting for my computer to catch up here. But again, I'm guessing it's because I was at 280 millimeter, And honestly, let me look at the dimensions on this. It's probably, yeah, look, like 1300 pixels on the short side. So it's cropped to death already, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I didn't crop closer is because it was already far away. Like this
Yeah.
one, right? Like 800 pixels on the short side. Like that's the
Oof.
crop out of this. Wait, I actually want to see. Look, yeah, there's the original frame, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty tight.
Yeah. So it's a heavy crop on a 70 to 200, you know, with a teleconverter. So, yeah, that was like, dude, this stuff is garbage. And the best part is, like, this is shit I shared online, man. Like, this
Listen, I'm not proud. Don't scroll back to the top of my Instagram feed, even just a few years ago. I'm not proud of some of that stuff. I want to delete it, but I kind of keep it there as a reminder.
totally. But yeah, look at this. I'm like, yeah, I'm proud of that, you know? Yeah. And like,
Yep.
yeah, I took the time to caption that and share it on, I think it was Flickr at the time. Like, that was, well, let's see, in 2000, yeah, 2009, that was the only social media that existed, right? It was Flickr.
Right.
There was no, I wonder when Facebook started.
Facebook was right around when I was a freshman in college, which was '04.
Okay, so it was before. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it didn't like it originally was only with like a handful of colleges
Yeah,
before
yeah,
they
yeah.
expanded it, so it really
Yeah.
wasn't much of anything.
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's hilarious to look at some of this old stuff, man. It's just, you know. And then yeah, I did upgrade to the 300f4. I mean, even if you look through this thumbnail, it's like there's everything's just tight and like just awful light. Like what the hell, you know? Like that's just so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, not good lighting on that one.
No, not good anything on that one. Horrible perspective. I mean, it's sharp. That's about the only thing I can give it, you know?
But hey, that's how you learn, right? Everybody
totally
starts
is,
somewhere. And
well, and like, yeah, like this is a great example, right? So my first trip to Barnegat, here, let me, like, I would love to compare this to.
I feel like you've talked about these Barnegat shots specifically in one of your videos with Scott too.
I very well may have. Oh, yeah, because we met there. You know,
Okay.
like that's where him and I met the first time was at Barnegat. And yeah, but like if I compare, so let's see, we'll go from 2010 to 2017. So 7-year difference. And like it's just like night and day, you know?
Not even close.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look at that. And this is the same thing, right? This bird's down at water level. This bird's down at water level. But here is me taking my life into my hands and climbing down on the rocks and like trying.
I've never
to
been there, but I've heard about that.
You haven't yet?
No, I haven't made it down there, but I heard the rocks will kill you if you're not careful.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah. I pulled a lady out of the rocks one time. She had fallen down in there. Yeah, and she was so lucky because it was this brutal winter day, right? And there's me and a couple of other photographers. We're all the way out on the end of the jetty. So the way it's set up, right? There's an inlet there, and the jetty rocks run along the inlet, and then they get to like the sand beach on the opposite side of the inlet, right? The beach comes up there, but then the jetty continues out past that. So at a certain point, you're out on the jetty and there's water on both sides, right? So you're just like on the rocks, there's nowhere else to go. And so it's me and a couple other photographers, middle of winter, freezing cold. We're all the way on the end of the jetty. Everybody's dressed appropriately, got appropriate footwear, and we're sitting out there shooting. It's like cold, windy, and it was just the light turned to shit, so it was time for me to wrap it up. So I start walking back, and as I'm walking back, I see this woman walking towards me, and I can already tell she's not dressed appropriately. So it's an older woman, and she is just, you know, like somewhat of a heavy jacket, but not like real heavy winter gear. And she doesn't look like she has the right boots on, and she's got a point and shoot, you know? And I'm like already thinking like, what the hell is this lady doing out here with a point and shoot camera? And then as I'm walking, bloop, she just disappears right into the rocks. And I'm like, oh shit.
I made a laugh. But...
Yeah. So I go running up to her and she's all banged up. There's like blood running down her leg. She had dress boots on, like slip-on dress boots, totally filled with water. So I give her a hand and like pull her out. Her camera's all busted up. And she's just like, I'm like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm all right. She's like, can you just do me a favor and go back and tell my husband that I'm okay? Because he probably saw me fall and he's probably freaking out right now because he was standing on the edge of the beach. Because she's like, he's got a bad knee. He can't come out here. So like,
perfect storm.
Like, dude, lady, like, because the one whole side was wet from the waves crashing over it. So I'm like, listen, this side's dry. Walk back on this side. And because I tried to offer her help, she's like, no, I just need a minute to kind of compose myself. And if you could just go tell him, I'm like, all right. So I go back and tell him, and but I'm just like, why on earth are you out there? It just makes no sense. And she probably saw other people out there and thought like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll go out there. And yeah.
She's out there for that bottom shot, right? That's what she's
Gonna,
going for.
yeah,
With
she
her
had the
point and
underwater
shoot.
rig.
Yes.
Oh man.
That's a great one though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny the progress you can make.
No doubt. No doubt, man. Yeah. The gear
Excellent.
change certainly helps, but it's more experience, certainly.
Yeah. So a question for you. So I know you started off so I shouldn't say that. The question is because you do wedding stuff, and event photography, and curious if that was the original passion which evolved into wildlife, or was the wildlife the passion, and then you kind of took up the event stuff kind of to feed or fund
Yeah.
the need on the other side.
That's a great question. It was more, I think photography was a passion, and especially the computer side of it. So when I first got into it, it was my senior year in high school. Had no idea what I wanted to do. I took a digital photography class where they taught Photoshop, and the teacher in that class, real cool dude. He actually gave me like a hacked version of Photoshop to install on my computer at home because I couldn't afford to buy Photoshop. Because back then, right, it's like $600 to buy it. I mean, maybe you could get it for $400 on an education discount, but it was not cheap, just to get into it. And so, being like a high school student, there's no way I was going to buy that. So he gives me this version to install at home and gives me a book. It's called the Photoshop Bible. It's like this 800-page book, like super thick, right? And in that time in my life, for some reason, I was able to read the thing cover to cover and like retain 80 to 90% of it all.
Wow.
So within 2 months, I was teaching him, like teaching the teacher and everybody in the class. Cause it hooked me, man. Like just the computer side of stuff. I love just the idea of digital manipulation and what you could do. And I found it really powerful. So I get my first job out of high school by just like cold calling photography studios that were within an hour from my home. And the one place, when I called them up, they're like, come in for an interview. We just got our first digital camera and we're just getting started to like start with digital photography.
Nice.
So I go into the interview, end up teaching them stuff on the interview. They hired me right away. And then I worked there, and that was the wedding and portrait studio. So, I started working there just only wanting to be behind the computer. And that's kind of all I did for a while, actually. I started helping them out by assisting on weddings, and it was film. They were shooting Hasselblad, so it was medium format film. And so that got me into the wedding photography thing a little bit. But I barely shot. I was mainly just kind of like an assistant. And, I just really love the computer side of things. So I was like managing all the digital stuff in the studio, doing all the retouching and, compositing, making like, composites for high school senior portraits and stuff like that. So I was doing all of that. And, that was really where my passion was at. But then as time went on, it was like, I'm tired of sitting behind the computer only. So I got interested in shooting a little bit more. Plus, they started adding digital cameras as like a second shooter. So the main photographer on the weddings would still shoot the medium format film, but then they would have me with a second camera just shooting more like candid stuff, So that was my intro into wedding photography on the digital side of things. And I don't know that was ever my passion. It wasn't my passion then until I left that studio and then shot with another photographer who was somebody who got into the wedding photography like once digital had taken over. So because these guys still shot film, right? Everything was even when they shot digital, everything was kind of old school, right? It was like stand here, pose here, tons of flash, just like light it up, like real hokey imposed. And then I shoot with this lady, and she's like shooting everything all modern. She's shooting like 7200 at 2.8, wide open stuff, all available light, barely using flash, super candid. I'm like, holy shit, this is so much better. And it kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there's a totally different way of shooting weddings, And I think that kind of applies to wildlife too. It's like, when we all get into it, at least for myself, it was like portraits, sun behind my back, like that's how you shoot. And then all of a sudden, as you evolve, you kind of realize like, oh wait, there can be a whole different way of shooting wildlife. With just very different light, crazy compositions and stuff like that. Um, but so I left that wedding photography studio and then started working for an architect photographer again, right? Doing all the computer stuff. I didn't shoot for him at all. But that's where I got really good at Photoshop, because it was like spending a couple of hours on a single image, making it look perfect, So that was where I really honed my Photoshop skills. And while I was there, my now ex-wife and I started a photography business together, our wedding photography business. And the first few years on that, super passionate, just eager to learn, because I was learning so much, like in the beginning, for me, it was just like every little thing I would see was like something new, something inspirational, like following all kinds of photographer blogs, checking stuff out online, social media, and just like taking it all in, going and taking workshops and learning this and learning that. It was just like information overload, but loving it,
Right.
And that's where I learned a lot of all the lighting that I do with wildlife, was through all that kind of portrait stuff. So there was definitely a passion in the beginning, but after, being around weddings and shooting them on and off for 20 years, it kind of was just like, yeah, it's enough of that.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. And so I started, I would say maybe 4 years ago at this point, I started trying to make a little bit of money with the wildlife stuff. And then it kept getting more and more. And then as of last November, so coming up in November, it'll be a full year that I'm just full-time wildlife, and I haven't shot.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I haven't shot a portrait or a wedding, and don't plan to.
That's awesome, man. I guess that's probably was the goal, or maybe it wasn't the initial goal, but that evolved into that. That's awesome that you're able to manage.
Yeah, definitely. At a certain point, it was like, oh, this is actually possible. Like that's when it started becoming more of the goal. Was like, I'm seeing what I'm making on the side compared to the weddings, and the balance kept going a little bit up with the wildlife as the weddings were, stable or at least slowly going down, because I was putting more time into the wildlife. And when I finally just decided, let's just go all in, like I had to cut off the weddings. That was scary as
It's like a leap of faith. Yeah.
Yeah, because the weddings book a year in advance, right? So I had to decide in the beginning of 2019 that the end of 2019 was going to be the last wedding I'm shooting. And then hope I could ramp up the wildlife business to take over once that ended. Because if not, even if at the end of, so let's say November 2019 was the last wedding I shot, right? So if it got to that point and the wildlife business wasn't supporting me, it's not like I could just say, all right, let me just start weddings back up, because they wouldn't book for another year. And I wouldn't see that money for another year. So there's like, yeah, it was.
So you'd be eating tuna fish and dog food for a year.
I cannot tell you how stressful that, like this time of the year last year, I was just like, I hope I can make this work. Like things were doing good, but it was terrifying. It really was. But I will say, and I've heard this from other people before, especially in the creative industry, if you give yourself a safety net, you're almost never going to go all in on what you're after, right? So if I had just kept shooting some weddings, I would have always had my foot in the door there and never been able to like fully commit to the wildlife thing and give it the time that it needed. Because I got to tell you, for the last year now at this point, I don't really do anything with spare time. Like spare time doesn't really exist for me, other than I am putting in effort towards the wildlife photography business, Thankfully, I love doing this, so it doesn't really feel that bad. It's not like I'm complaining, but it's nonstop. Like if I have an hour to kill, I'm sitting down at the computer, prepping photos for the website, or thinking what other workshop I can do, or I'm out scouting for something else, or I'm running a workshop, or just there's always something, and it's legit nonstop right now.
Well, that's awesome, man. I certainly respect the hustle. I'm similar with that, but obviously not all photography. I got a whole bunch of irons in the fire, a 9 to 5, trying to balance everything. And, it's not easy a lot of times, but, got to make it work. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing for you, I remember this, right? Every spare moment you get when wildlife photography is your passion, you're like, I want to go shoot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, pretty much.
And then you got to balance it with, family time and everything else that's going on in life. and it's hard, man. It's it's hard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Trying to manage, a regular 9 to 5 and the family time. And I'm a first time homeowner. I've had my house for a couple of years now, but still just trying to manage that whole thing and
Sure.
updating things and, you know, keeping on top of it. And I got, other priorities. I do volunteer rescue work and
Oh,
firefighting
really?
on the side. So it's constant
You're
training
giving yourself
classes
no
and stuff.
time.
So yeah, so when I can get out, it's a special it's a special period of time when I'm out in the field and I have the camera and I can just kind of relax and
Yeah.
do my thing.
Yeah, well, the your portfolio is like friggin' amazing for how busy you sound, you know?
Thanks, man. I
Cause
appreciate it.
yeah, well, cause I know that's the one of the hardest things, right? Is just spending a lot of time out in the field, and that's usually, honestly, what yields like some of the best photos. This shot's like stupid good, man.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah,
so
that was
nice.
just a luck. I was out at Middle Creek. I'm sure you're
Yep.
familiar. You've
Yeah,
been
yeah,
out there,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and it was like overcast and crummy, and then all of a sudden, it was weird because it wasn't even a full rainbow. It was just a little spot
Right there.
of color. Yeah, and admittedly, that's a heavy crop, but
Instagram don't care.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, I just kept waiting for the birds to fly in front of it before it
Oh, that's
disappeared,
awesome,
and it
man.
worked out well. Yeah,
Nice.
never know what you're gonna get.
Indeed, man. Yeah, you know what? Speaking of rainbows, so let me find this photo. I shot a least turn with a rainbow. Here we go. This photo, right? So I'm
Oh,
meeting
I
up
remember
with,
when you
yeah, I'm meeting up
posted
with
that one.
two clients that morning, and the night before we're looking at the forecast, and it's like chance of thunderstorms in the morning, but it's like it should be clearing out. So, but everything is like check 3 weather forecasts. Everything is like it's going to be like overcast in the morning. And so I'm talking to them. They're like, yeah, it's going to be cloudy. Do we need to be there at sunrise? I'm like, you're meeting me there at sunrise. I know it's effing early, but I don't care because let me tell you, like, it's, you never know, especially down the shore. So
Yep.
we meet up at sunrise. As I'm driving down, I'm like driving through on and off rain. So it's about an hour for me to get to the shore from where I live. And so I'm driving through on and off rain, and we get down there, and as I'm pulling like onto the islands, like going over the bridge, there's like lightning and everything offshore. I'm like, oh shit, like this is gonna suck. We're gonna have to like sit around and kill time for an hour and a half before we can shoot, right? But I get to the spot, I park, I'm waiting a couple minutes for them to show up. As I'm doing that, I'm seeing the lightning. It's getting further off, and I can't even hear the thunder anymore. So I'm like, okay, if I can't hear thunder, that lightning is pretty distant. So I feel pretty safe to take people on the beach at that point. Um, so they get there, and as soon as we walk onto the beach, like it was still cloudy overhead. We like crest the dunes, and then you could see like that band of orange right on the horizon where it was like starting to clear. And it's like, oh shit, the sun's gonna come up through there. This is gonna be fucking amazing. And so like now I'm like in hyper mode. I'm like, oh, let's go. Like we're running onto the beach.
Yeah,
I'm
we got to
like,
move.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, this sun is gonna come up. Because I was already expecting, like at that point we were taking our time because I thought it was just gonna be shit light. Um, so we get out there, man, and I had already been shooting this colony for a while, so I kind of knew where there was good birds. And sure enough, like the sun started streaming in, and we shot this right before that.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so this is before the sun even came up. This is actually like a traffic light off in the distance.
Oh, get out. I
Yeah.
thought that was the sun
Nope.
through a lot of.
Yeah. Nope.
Wow.
Yeah. So the sun
Oh
actually is
man.
like off camera to the right. It hadn't come up yet, and yeah, this is a traffic light back there, and I'm like working with the clients. I'm like, look, line this up, and I show them on the back of the camera. They're like, holy shit, let me get that. So then they get into the spot because, like, when you shoot this, like not everybody can shoot it at the same time, right? Because
Yeah.
you
Yep.
have to be lined up perfectly. So I
Hmm.
grab the shot, make sure it works. Next person jumps in, gets it. Next person jumps in, gets it. And then the sun popped and started giving the rainbow, and then it was like chase the rainbow, It was like, and this
I love
bird,
that shot.
yeah, this stupid ass bird would not hold still, dude. He was like left and right, and so I couldn't I couldn't just stand up and chase him and take a shot because I had to get low. I had to lay in the sand to get low enough to
Yep.
see the rainbow up there. So I'm like,
You
all right,
can't go back and forth while you're prone.
exactly, right? So he runs to the left. I run up ahead of him. get down, and then he turns. I'm like, oh my God, back up, get over here, turn. Dude, no joke, I'm like out of breath, sweating, like trying to get this. And the clients are just looking at me like, what the F are you doing, man? You know, because they like just couldn't see it yet, you know? And so I finally get this shot, and I'm like, and then he settled down, and I'm yelling at them, I'm like, get over here, like get here now. And they got in there just in time to like get some shots and make it work. But I think, yeah, this was at 500 millimeter. So I had actually run back from him too to get some distance, so I could keep him small and include like more of the rainbow in there. But it was crazy.
It's worth it, man. My wife thinks I'm crazy sometimes. I'm setting like 3:30 alarms so I can get up, catch a sunrise, go out, shoot, and still get home in time to like have a normal day together to try to, you know, limit how much the photography encroaches on, you know, what we need to do. And I swear sometimes he's like, you're getting up when?
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, I have never regretted an early wake up. Even if I come up empty, I've never regretted having that time and being out there and giving the effort. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But
no doubt,
I wouldn't want to say, oh yeah, I didn't make the effort, and I wonder what could have been. You know, what did I miss?
Yeah, totally. So, no, that's a great point. Like you said, even when it doesn't work out, it is there's nothing like just being out there for the start of the day, man. You know, obviously a clear day when you can actually see the sunrise is even better, like watching that. But just being out there for the start of the day, man, it's like, oh, like what a cool experience. And I also feel like of all the humans on the planet, there's a small portion of them that actually get to experience like the start of the day, right? So many other people are, you know, either just always waking up later after sunrise, or even if they're up, right, they're just commuting to work or something like that. So yeah, to just be out in nature, like when the day starts, it's freaking awesome, man. Yeah.
It is special.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then the best part, like you just said, right? You can go out, have a whole session, maybe get some great photos, and then have the whole day ahead of you.
Exactly.
You're like done. It's like 7 a.m., you know? You're like, all right, let's get going.
I do that a lot with her. Like we'll go away for the weekend and I'm like, hey, we're doing this. This is a trip for us. Yeah. But by the way, I'm going to sneak out from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. I'll be back when you're waking up and we're ready to start our day. I'll be back and we're good to go. So it works out.
It's totally fine. Yep. That's so cool. You have any shoots planned coming up? Like anything specific?
Actually do. Yeah.
What do you got?
This past weekend, we did a little getaway. We went down to the Chesapeake.
Oh, nice.
And ended up
Where
coming
are you based
up completely empty. Oh, sorry. I'm outside of Philadelphia. I'm in an area called Downingtown.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit west of the city. Affords plenty of opportunities for wildlife that I never had as a kid growing up. I grew up in New York City, so it was like, God, you saw a bird, and it was like, oh my God.
Anything other than a pigeon.
Yeah. So now it's a little different, but yeah. So this past weekend we did a little getaway down in the Chesapeake, and total washout. Rain almost the entire time. We went hiking when we could, and you know our shoes were soaked, and it was a mess. So that didn't work out. But this coming weekend, I'm taking a little road trip down to North Carolina. Looking for some black bears, which I haven't had a whole lot of luck with in the past. So
I have never photographed one.
Really?
Yeah, never photographed a bear yet. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Yeah. Well, I know you focus mainly on birds, but
I do. Yeah, I'm hoping to change that when I go to Alaska in like a week. So.
Oh, you're going to Alaska in a week? I hate you, man. That's the bucket list trip right there, and
yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I'm excited to see what you're going to come up with. That's
so,
for sure.
is this honestly, because I've never targeted bears, is this a good time to find them down there?
I think it's probably better earlier in the spring when the cubs are out and, you know, the sows are trying to get as much food as they can for the little guys and all that. But you know, this is just the time that works for me with this whole pandemic thing. Everything's kind of been thrown into flux.
Yeah.
So this is just a good opportunity. I was saving my PTO for wildland firefighting, because I mentioned I do that on the side. So every summer I'll get a call and we'll end up in some state doing that for a couple weeks. But this year it's not going to work out due to the pandemic. So now I have some PTO to burn, so I'm taking a day here.
Hell yeah, man! Take advantage of that.
Yeah, for sure. So
that's
I'll let you know how it works out. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that should be fun. I was gonna say I'd entertain joining you, but yeah, I got to get ready for Alaska. So.
Yeah, well, I'm not afraid of doing another one, so I'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah, cool, man. No, it's actually something I really want to try and start branching out into. Is like you just said, travel just a little more, even if it's just like a long weekend or three to 5 days, something like that. Just
Yep.
get away and hit a different area and try for something different. Um,
I've been extremely lucky with my job. I travel a lot for work, and a lot of the places that I'll go have um, some really good locations near sanctuaries and stuff. And I'll throw my camera in my carry-on bag, and
yeah,
even if I take one extra day, I'll grab a local hotel before I start work or after I finish work, and I'll just go drive out to a wildlife refuge, shoot for a day, and fly home. It affords me a
perfect.
great opportunity where I can get out there and I don't have to, spend $1,000 on flights.
Totally.
So
Yeah. Dude, listen to this, right? So I'm doing this Alaska trip because last year I won a photo contest and they gave me a $250 gift card for a Delta gift card, right? And
awesome.
it expires this September. I had to use it by September. So of course, it's it's pandemic time, and I'm like, where the hell am I gonna go? So anyway, a guy I know from Instagram lives in Alaska. Told me a year or two ago, he's like, anytime you want to come up, let me know. So I shoot him a message and was just like, hey, out of any curiosity, like, would this be a good time of year? He's like, it's not great for birds, but it's good for moose, bear, and Dall sheep. So I'm like, all sounds good to me. So
Awesome.
I hop online, right? Check out the price. $287 round trip from Philly to Alaska. Like, what? I couldn't believe it. And so I
That's
put out $37 out of my pocket to get a round trip ticket to Alaska.
oh my God. I'm gonna hang
Insane.
up now because I'm pissed. That is a win
Right? I when I looked the price up, I'm like, dude, I would have spent that out of my pocket anyway for $250. Like,
for
come
sure.
on.
Oh
Yeah,
my
just
God.
absolutely crazy. So yeah, I'm gonna meet up with him, and we're gonna do some camping for like a week, and he's gonna show me around and hopefully I don't even
Oh,
I
so you got
told
a
him.
guide too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got a guide, I got a place to stay, I don't have to rent a car. I mean, he's hooking me up, man.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. That is a win,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, no. So I'm
All right,
really
so we
excited.
expect some next level photos when you come back.
Yeah, yeah. But honestly, he was asking me, he's like, I'm not sure if this is gonna be great. I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit what we get. I'm just gonna have fun to just get up there for like a week and wander around. Like, if we
Yeah.
photograph stuff, great. But like, I
You'll
am
stumble
not
upon something. It's Alaska,
exactly.
dude.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
exactly, exactly. Yo, I want to hear the
it's
story about this
awesome.
deer, the piebald.
Yeah, so this is you're getting back in the Instagram feed, so it's not my great work, not anything I'm proud of, but I will say we're super excited about this one. I went out with my wife. There's a local spot, and so the penny pack.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Oh, it
so
was
we
there.
were yeah,
What?
yeah. So we went hiking there like almost every weekend, like it was our thing,
Yeah.
and we would spend every Friday night, maybe sometimes twice a weekend, just hiking the trails and hanging around there. It's actually where we got our engagement photos taken as a
Oh, nice,
result. But
man.
a couple times we were walking, people see you with the camera, they always strike up a conversation. Hey, what are
Really?
you
They do that?
shooting? Do you
Yeah.
see anything? So
Haven't
a couple
experienced that.
people a couple people we chatted with had mentioned, when I said, I'm shooting wildlife, looking for whatever, whatever's running around here on four legs. And they had a couple people had said, oh yeah, there's a white deer around here. And in my head,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, if there's an albino deer, I'm gonna lose my mind. You
Yeah,
see a
yeah,
piebald every now and then, but
yeah.
if it's so in my head, I'm like, oh my God, it must be an albino for them to say it's fully white.
Sure.
So at any rate, we're walking on the trail one night, and I still laugh about this because some woman again sees me with the camera, stops me walking the other way, and
Yeah.
she goes, "If you're looking for animals, right across the way, there's a goat." And I'm like, I look at my wife, I'm like,
Dude, this
"Why is
thing
there a
does look like a goat, though.
legit,
It really does.
legitimately?" So
Yeah.
we're like, I don't know about a goat, and we're like looking at each other and we laugh, and she walks off, and we're like, I don't know, that must be a crazy lady.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
sure enough, we look across, and sure as shit alongside the creek, we saw it like walk through the woods. And I was
Wow.
like, oh my God, that's the deer. So we went, we ran down and went across the creek back to our normal area where a lot
Yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah.
deer frequent. And sure enough, he like just walked out of the woods I didn't even see him. I heard her like trying to get my attention, like snapping. She was like, hey, over there,
Oh,
over
no
there.
kidding.
And I turned and I was like, oh my God, there he is.
That's
I was
so
able to
cool.
fire off a couple of good shots before he ran away. I mean, I would have loved to have gotten a little closer and had some a better glass at the time. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hey, you got to do what you got to do. So
That's
I
right,
was happy
man.
just to
Yeah.
get something.
Well, I won't show you my piebald deer then.
Oh man, you're gonna make me hate you.
Oh, so do you want to
Yes.
see it?
Definitely.
Mine was kind of similar in that it was just dumb luck, man.
Oh, that is awesome.
Isn't that insane? Like the lineup too, right? Flanked by two regular deer by himself. Yeah. And I mean, I did get one of it, on its own. But then when they all posed up like this, I'm like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
I drive out to this spot to shoot shorebirds in the fall. When was this? It was, yeah. So, I guess it wasn't that fall. It was early August. So shorebird migration just kicking in. So I went out to this spot because it's usually good for that. And maybe I was looking for green herons too. Anyway, driving out before sunrise, and I had I had a D5 actually instead of my D4S. I forget, probably because I was repairing my D4S, because it needs repair all the time because I beat the shit out of it. Anyway, so I have this camera, and I thought I had all the settings pretty close to right, but wasn't totally sure. In any case, the camera was in the back because I wasn't even anywhere near where I thought I was going to see anything to shoot, right? Because it's like pretty dark at this point. So I'm driving, and then I see these two deer across the way. I'm like, wow, it's really pretty because of the calm reflection, right? All I saw at first was the two standard whitetails. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see like this white blob, and I'm like, oh, there must be like, honestly, it registered as like, oh, there's trash on the shoreline over there, you know? And then I'm watching these deer, and then the trash moves, and I'm like, oh shit.
That's not trash. That's a goat.
Yeah. it's effing goat. So I look at, I'm like, oh my God, it's a piebald. The camera's in the backseat. I am like trying. So I don't even think I had the car in park. I'm like jammed on the brake, doing one of these, right? I'm just like trying to get it back, trying to, like not release the brake and go driving into the freaking water. And so I get the camera, bang it into all kinds of shit, and then finally get up. And I just I think this was the first shot. Yeah, look. So I'm at 200th of a second. Look at the ISO. 20 grand.
Jesus, you did not want to miss that shot, man.
Yeah. So the first shot, because I wasn't ready to shoot, I just like pointed and shot, thinking the camera was going to be ready. And it's like, I take a shot and look in the settings. I'm like, oh shit, 20 grand. Like I know the D5 is good at low light, but it ain't that good,
Yeah.
Which honestly, the shot is actually passable.
Yeah, it's actually not bad.
Yeah. For 20,000 ISO. So then I thankfully did notice it. And I switched into manual, dropped my shutter speed way down to like 50th of a second, which is still 11,000 ISO. Like that's how dark it was.
Yeah. Wow. At f4 too.
At f4, right?
Man.
Yeah. So there was not a lot of light. And
that's risky at 1/50th of a second, man. I know deer freeze.
Held still.
They're like,
yeah.
But still.
Yeah. And I'm shooting out of the passenger side, right? So it's the awkward, like just trying to balance
the
strap,
and that's big glass too to try to.
And it's like it's all core strength. You're like locking up your abs, trying to lock it in and hold it steady. And anyway, I get a few shots. They do that pose, then they give me like this, and then they just like walked off into the woods and like gone. So it all happened in a matter of like I would say under 2 minutes. It just happened kind of quick, but the shots.
Those are the moments, man, that you never know what you're going to get when you go out.
And I don't think I did anything else that day, but it didn't matter. Like I think the rest of that morning kind of sucked.
Those photos remind me of one I recently posted of the same situation where deer just started crossing the creek when we were walking. Yeah, that one.
Nice.
I was out again with the wife in Pennypack again. Yeah, and and these guys just
there.
yeah, hey, anytime you want, man. It's not far drive for me.
No.
And we were hiking on a trail, and they crossed behind me in the creek. I was up front, she was walking with our little guy behind me, and all of a sudden I heard her turn. She was like, "Turn around, there's deer in the creek." I was like, "Oh, really?" I swear, I damn near fell into the creek. I was like sliding down the bank. I was literally holding on to like a plant and a root to get my foot
hoping
set.
that root's gonna stay.
Yep.
Don't
yep.
give
and
out,
you get
root.
like the
Don't give
leg.
out.
And when I set my leg, and like my leg is quivering, and I'm like, "Hang in there, buddy," and I'm just firing away.
Dude,
and they yeah, it was awesome, man. The reflection was great. If you swipe to the second one,
there's another one. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, this was the further one. And I
I
have
like
some
that shot
more
better.
shots too. Yep.
Yep. The
Yep.
scenic works better. Here's why, right? So yeah, it's all great to see it close and everything, but there's nothing else in this frame, right? It's black. You have
Yep.
dark background. There's no distractions there. So you could make this thing another quarter of the size smaller than this, and it would still stand out great because there's nothing else in the frame. And
Yep.
I don't know why. I know it's just actually it's just a personal preference of mine. But when you have like that dark space or even light space around it, I love seeing things smaller because it just I don't know, it just like exaggerates that space, like that black
It
around it.
makes them pop more.
It somehow does, even though they're smaller in the frame. Yeah, it makes them stand out more, and it just, I don't know, it creates an illusion of just, I just like this space around the frame, versus like the tighter view, And again,
Yeah.
not saying
It's
it's
the
like bad,
contrast.
um, but yeah, this to me is just so much more of like an evocative shot. Like this gives me a little like I don't know, I can see the whole scene around it. It's dark, and you got this spotlight of sun coming in, right? It just tells me more about the whole encounter there, and kind of puts me in the scene more
Yep.
than the close up, which seems kind of counterintuitive, right? You would think the close up would put you like more in the
Yeah,
moment, but
I think the close up is more like here's the animal, but
yeah,
the wider shot is like it's more of a mood,
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know?
totally. And then like if you were gonna print this, like this would feel so much better as a print on the
Oh yeah,
wall
without a
versus
doubt.
like the
Without
tight
a
shot,
doubt.
Yeah. So
Yep. I think I only put the wider shot in my print shop.
oh, nice, nice.
Yeah. There were a
Uh,
couple other good ones that night. It was crazy because there was three of them and there were three in velvet, and I have another shot where the
ooh,
two of them were were foraging in the water, like their heads were down, and
oh,
they
nice.
were basically head to head with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
double reflection. It looks like four deer.
Oh, that's pretty
It
sweet.
worked out really nice.
That's
Yeah.
really sweet. Love your composition here too.
Thanks.
Is this
Yeah,
something you
it
composed?
just worked out.
Yeah, did you compose it like this in camera, or was this just a post crop? Like,
No, I composed it like that. There
oh,
is a
sweet
little bit
man.
of a crop here.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to make sure there was another deer to his or to the left to his
Gotcha. So you
backside
clipped him out.
that I made sure I got him out there, but I
Okay, cool.
definitely wanted that space to the
Yeah,
right
yeah, yeah.
to let him breathe a little bit, and just the
Nice,
fact
dude.
that he had stepped into the sunlight,
Yeah,
exposed for him, and everything else darkens down.
totally.
It was perfect.
Yeah, that is perfect, man. Yeah, I love that stuff. Well, dude, we're getting on like an hour. We should probably wrap up the chat, huh?
Yeah, that's
That
fine by
went
me.
quick though, damn.
It did.
It
It did. I
really
could go
did.
another hour.
I know, man. Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to ask while we were chatting?
Let me think. It was. Oh, I was curious your favorite season, because I know you shoot all the time. You're at the shore, like we were talking
Oh
earlier.
man.
You're at the shore with like in Barnegat in the dead
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
winter.
yeah, yeah.
Summer's great. I know for me, I obviously, well, not obviously, I prefer summer. That's me. I'm an outdoors guy. In the winter, I tend to like, I'm too cold and I suffer.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if you had a strong preference either way.
I mean, I can tell you based on my area and bird photography, I can tell you flat out, fall is the season I hate the most because it's just dead for birds around here.
Yeah.
So all the summer birds have started to leave, and then the winter birds haven't arrived yet. Um, shooting migrating birds is like a total crapshoot. It's just like you go and spend all this time out, and you maybe get lucky. Like you have to
Yeah.
be there over and over again to happen to be lucky to get either a songbird or raptor. Like actually, raptor migration around here sucks. Unless you're right at the shore. So fall, I can tell you, I hate that one. The other seasons, it's tough, man. Probably like I definitely like the challenge of winter shooting. That's certainly a fun thing for me. But I wouldn't say it's my favorite season just because it is tough and there's not a ton of stuff around here. The things you can get are exciting when they work out, but by 3 months in on winter, I'm like, yeah, it's enough of this shit.
Yeah, I hear you on
Yeah,
that.
it's definitely between spring and summer. I think it's probably got to be spring, man, because just
You're the
everything's
warbler
coming
guy,
back.
right?
Yeah, the warbler stuff is like so incredible. I mean, I will tell you, by the end of warbler season, I'm done with warblers. I'm like ready to change it up. It's like time for shorebirds because warbler photography is really tough to be creative with. It's more of just get the shot. Like it's more about finding the bird and good habitat versus like
Right.
being presented with a scene that you can kind of work creatively and
Yeah, I feel like nothing's guaranteed with that, right? You got to
yeah,
find the bird, and if it just so happens to be in a good area, great. Whereas with the shorebird, to your point, you can be so much more creative with
Yeah.
positioning and like.
Yeah, and also like lighting, right? So like the majority of my warbler photography is still overcast, even though I certainly tried to do uh a lot with some sun and a little bit more dramatic with
Mhm.
backlight and stuff like that, like shit like this. I tried to do a little bit more of that kind of interesting stuff this year, but the majority, no doubt, is still just overcast light. And so again, it's more about the scene, right? It's more about like finding like crazy scenes like this, where things just work out. This
Yep.
isn't. I mean, there's absolutely nothing creative about the lighting or the composition. Really, it's pretty straightforward. But it's awesome perch, awesome bird, awesome flower, right? Um,
Yep.
so those are the challenges with that. Whereas with like the shorebird photography, like you'll see, right? It's all flat light, flat light. Give me, well, then I did the loons, but as
Yeah.
soon as I
Those
hit
look great.
shorebird photography, it's like silhouettes, backlit. There's
Yeah.
colors
Yeah.
everywhere. This one I just shot the other day. This is like a good 40 minutes after sunset. Yeah. I pushed the hell look 30th
What's
of a
your
second,
ISO at?
10
Oh,
grand.
10,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At f4, and I had to, and then this shot I had to like manually focus. So, and not, I couldn't even manually focus this one through the lens. I had to actually,
Really?
it was too dark. I couldn't see through the lens. So
So what'd you do?
I kicked into live view, cranked the ISO to the max. It actually makes the live view on the back brighter than it is in real
Ah.
life. And then I was able to punch in on the back and then manually rack focus until I could see it was sharp through all the grain and shit. And then I kicked out of live view and then took the shot.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is creative. I would
Yeah.
have just thrown my hands up.
Dude, it's yeah, look, 1/8 of a second at 4,000 ISO, and I was just handheld, like resting it on the beach, like no tripod, nothing.
Hmm.
I mean, I was laying down on the beach. But it was, let's see, what time was this? This was 8:57. Sunset was like 8:05 that day.
Oh wow,
So it's
man.
like a good 45 minutes after sunset, and we were still out there shooting, and yeah, it was crazy. But anyway, like shorebird stuff is like, like this kind of stuff. It's like,
That one that you got is unbelievable. I think I messaged you. I watched the editing
oh
video
yeah,
on
yeah,
this too
yeah,
because I just love this shot. And I'm
yeah.
like, I
Thanks,
want to see
man.
what he did with it too. This that's just incredible.
Yeah, thanks, man. But yeah, this kind of stuff, like you just can't. For me, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get out of warbler season and get into this kind of stuff. I definitely have fun with it, but I still would say like just the whole forest coming alive, everything turning green, everything blooming, all those beautiful warblers showing up in spring. I think I'd have to say spring with summer a close second season. And
Awesome.
summer's your favorite season?
Well, I was thinking more like summer versus winter, but if you put in the buffer seasons, I got
Yeah.
to go with spring all the time, just because
Okay.
you're heading into summer and like
Yeah, yeah,
everything's
yeah,
coming alive and all that.
yeah.
And I summer drives me nuts sometimes because of the lens fogging.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
in
yeah.
Cape May a couple weeks back and totally forgot to acclimate my equipment. I had it in my freezing cold room. We had the AC cranked down, and I went out and I couldn't shoot
For
for
like
it was
a,
over an hour.
was it that long? Yeah,
It was horrible, dude. The
yeah,
humidity was 96%,
yeah.
so it was
Yep,
forget it. I
yep.
worked with it, but there's nothing you can do but
No, I mean
wait.
you wipe it off and like 30 seconds later it's fogged up again. Yeah.
Yeah, I ended up doing that. I had a lens wipe in my bag, and I was laying on the beach, wiping, shooting a couple shots, wiping, and I'm like, I don't want to get a grain of sand on the cloth and scratch the glass, and like, so it was,
Dude,
it
trust me,
was
man.
fun.
You can be rougher on these lenses than you think. I'm not
You
saying like
think?
don't care about it. Dude. I've been like on the beach just shirt wiping stuff and everything. I'm like, whatever. Yeah.
Okay, good to know
uh
because I was doing it real gingerly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that is a great point, and it's actually something good for us to share as like a tip. I think we'll kind of
Yeah.
wrap up the chat that way. But yeah, if you're ever shooting in real humid areas, do not drive there with your air conditioning on in the car, and if you can, yeah, don't have it cranked down in the house before you leave with it, because you get that front element chilled, and you go out in the humid air, and the hot air or the warm air just condenses on it, and
Yep.
there's nothing you can do until that lens warms back up. So there's no way
Yeah.
to speed it up. There's nothing. You just have to sit around and wait.
If
And
you have a secure area at night to put it out, like on a porch or something like
yeah,
that, do it. If you could also leave it in your car overnight, I know, because of theft, a lot of people are
sure.
hesitant to do that. All my stuff's insured, so I'll be doing that maybe going forward.
Yeah,
But crack a window and leave it and cover it up. It doesn't need to
yeah.
be exposed, but
Exactly.
make sure people can't see it. But it's got to be the ambient temperature. Or you're gonna have a lot of trouble.
Yeah, yeah, totally, man. Yeah, my normally it takes me about an hour to drive to the shore, so I just don't put the air on in the car, and that's
There
usually
you go.
enough to kind of acclimate it on the way down. But I'll tell you, man, the one good thing about the humidity is sunsets, like you see right here on the screen right now, because
That's a good
the
point.
sun doesn't do that on like on a clear winter day. Even when the sun's that low, it's just a glowing ball, like it's just white. You
Right.
cannot expose for it. But when it's super humid like that, it cuts the power of the sun down dramatically, and then you can all of a sudden get it in the exposure, and it's like magic, man. It just
It's a
works
good
so well.
point.
So yeah,
And you get what you see here.
that's right, man. Yes, that's what you do. All right, dude. Thank you so much, man. This was a great time. Can't wait to do more of these. And yeah, dude. Have a great night, and I'm
You
sure
too.
we'll.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you having me on. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to chat with you. It's always a pleasure. Really admire your work and all the tips and tricks and all the stuff that you put out there for other people to learn from. It's really good stuff, man. Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Happy to
Thanks
do
for
so,
having me.
man. Hopefully, we can shoot together soon.
Sounds good.
All right.